Hey guys, first video on my load 2 hours ago was blocked worldwide because I used some filler images. I'm very careful. I wouldn't have used Star Wars or anything like that. I don't know what could have possibly done it. I just can't use any images anymore. Why bother? Hey guys, it's Matt. This video will leave up a detailed graphic, but if you're driving or just listening or on a phone, you don't need to see the graphic. I'll talk about each part specifically when we get to it. It's a graphic submitted by Wayne, and thanks for that. It's very similar to my own understanding and thoughts as to how things work here. So if you haven't seen my last video that I put out on Sunday, please watch that first. It's just a general summary of why this endless manipulation, why the endless tricks from these minions on behalf of this system or screen or Clinton backwards, not Nilk. Why do they play these games with us constantly? What is the nature of the deception? Why the constant deception? Most people, I appreciate the comments. Most people are like, yeah, that's probably pretty close. It probably explains why the deception and the lies are at the level that they are. But the thing about the last video was it didn't even present the final part. It didn't even talk about the most important part. And I was certainly going to talk about this soon anyway, but Wayne submitted the graphic. It's very close to how I think things work. So I will go over it. And again, guys, if you're not able to see the graphic, don't worry about it. You do not need it. The general concept is, and why this is the most important part, and I just didn't want to get into it in the last video. It was kind of a separate analysis of what all these endless tricks and manipulations are for, is that ultimately there's nothing physical. Consciousness creates everything. So let's just, I know there's still a certain percentage of this community that completely rejects that, but it's almost obvious at this point. It really is. Now, we know everything in this world is an inversion, a perversion, but an inversion. Let's just keep it there, backwards. So what is science? The fundamental level of science at the basic level, what does it present to us through these frauds like Stephen Hawking? That physical came first. Don't you know, Matt? Don't you know, Andy? Everybody's innocent in here. Don't you know, Matt? Neil deGrasse Tyson says there was a big bang, man. It blowed up. This shit blowed up. And then, of course, it violated the second law of thermodynamics, where everything's supposed to go through entropy, and the situation that created the most entropy that could ever be possibly imaginable, the Big Bang, is the absolute pure definition of entropy. Well, per the second law of thermodynamics, order cannot come from chaos. Everything moves towards entropy, except somehow life was created out of the most chaotic event imaginable, which didn't happen. So there was a Big Bang and it blowed up. And then the physical was created, and Carl Sagan's billions and billions of galaxies and all this stuff floating around. And Q showed Captain Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation, the last episode. He gave Captain Picard a glimpse as to how life was formed on primordial Earth. He actually showed Captain Picard how the amino acids got on the back of other and similar proteins and got on the back of them and mated. Showed Captain Picard the origins of life. We're meant to believe that. And it's just the opposite, of course, because everything here is the opposite. There was no physical first that led to consciousness, and the evolution of a human being is absurd. Absurd. Watch My Octopus Teacher. Is very, very interesting on Netflix. Very well done. Of course, I don't want to rip it. It is a beautiful documentary, but there's some things that, it's still a little bit made for TV. Trust me, it's still a little bit made for TV. They filled in the gaps in a few places, in my opinions, but it's still a very beautiful story, and I shouldn't take away from it. But when you see the octopus, how it can simply change the colors or its texture in less than a half a second. It can become brown and whatever color, like a rock, and then if it moves on to a coral reef, it could become white, red, blue, green, and different colors in an instant, not even in a second. Now, there's no possible way anything could evolve into that using Darwin's principles or theories. And there's no way a human being came from a monkey or anything like that. It's absolutely absurd. And everything that science tries to lay down here is a deception to get people to believe that the physical always came first before consciousness, and that every explanation in some way must derive from the physical or what you know about physical reality between your two limited bookends that they try to shove closer and closer together as people get more and more like Forrest Gump every single day. It's the opposite. Of course, consciousness came first before the physical. It's almost not even worth talking about anymore. It's so obvious. So let's go over the graphic and a general level first, and then we'll talk about the details, and then talk about how the tactics that these a-holes employ on us all day long go right in line with this. And that they wouldn't employ the tactics that they do if this wasn't correct. So, again, I'm not sure exactly what he means by some of this, but you'll get the hang of it. And again, if you're not watching or you can't see the graphic, don't bother. At the top is this thing called the cosmic mind of spirit, and underneath are individual people, souls, spirits, individual minds. Assuming at this level we're talking about real people, nothing that we would call the NPC or the organic portal, so I guess we'll leave that out. And then the line of real people here in the middle level manifests reality, manifests and actually creates the physical world through consciousness. And again, if you're I don't know, 20, 30% of this truth community has always rejected this theory. Matt, you was talking about Elon Musk simulation again, blah, blah, blah. No, just have an open mind. In this community, we're supposed to have the most open minds, but that's not always the case at times. So off to the left, you have, interesting, he put this in a hexagram, that'd be, that's like the pole of Saturn. Hijacked reality through thoughts. Okay, so right down the middle, you have cosmic mind of spirit connected to individual consciousness and real souls, real spirits, who then continue along the line, manifest reality, the manifested realm of reality, the material world. But off to the left, hijacked reality through thoughts. All the minions are off to the left on behalf of the screen, on behalf of the not-nilk. Christians would say on behalf of Satan, on behalf of whatever we bring out through the one-way mirror into the police lineup, of course, wants to get in between cosmic mind of spirit and the manifestation of the real world to hijack, of course, the thoughts of real spirited beings that create the reality. So let's just see what he says off to the left here. Individual minds are the conduit for the cosmic mind to manifest material reality. Okay? Similar to what we talked about. Let's see what it says off to the right. The cosmic mind of spirit works through the fractal minds of individuals to project and manifest the material world. Okay? Those individuals who can tune, and this is like Dark City, tuning. Those individuals who can tune into the cosmic mind of spirit can influence their individual personal reality through a high level of consciousness, awareness, and correct scientific thinking, or in other words, their higher level of awareness combined with right thought, right feeling, and right action lifts them above the controlling factor of the currently presented version of reality so they can externalize the reality they want. Okay. And at the bottom, the only action of mind is thought, and thoughts create all corresponding external conditions. Now, the most important part of the graphic that has, goes along with what has dominated my quest to understand over the last almost 10 years is, the part of the graphic that shows the not-nilk or the minions off to the side. It says hijacked reality through thoughts. And they're interrupting the flow of cosmic mind of spirit down through individual real souls, down through the manifestation of reality. There's arrows coming into the side, right into the heads of the individuals. And there's no question, this is how they operate. But if this graphic and this presentation of how even the physical is created through consciousness. If this doesn't apply, if this isn't accurate, then, ultimately, what is all the manipulations for? What are all the manipulations of the minions for? This is where I talk about getting in our business constantly, daily. Every time you turn around and turn the TV on or a smart device, it's constantly trying to influence you, to get you to believe a certain thing. If you didn't influence reality itself, we usually don't go far enough. Then what is the point? I mean, first grade truth back in, when I got on YouTube, not my personal channel, but started investigating around 2008 or so, 2007, 2008, probably before the Texas Shrug channel. It was all first grade explanations. Well, everything being done here, Matt, is about money and power. Just watch Scarface. That explains everything. There's nothing going on outside your bookends. There's nothing going on outside, known physical reality or anything strange going on. It's just, same old, Matt, money and power. And we know now that that's just obviously, it's a nice little tertiary benefit for some of the minion a-holes, but that's not what it's all about. So we evolved and we took it to the next level. We wised up a bit and said, yeah, it's not about money and power. There's so much more going on here that we can't even comprehend. We started seeing the energy harvesting, the loosh, terms like that. Why are they constantly trying to put us into a certain state or a certain frequency, resonance, or harmonics? Worry, anxiety, fear, stress, all the, society, we could see how it's engineered to produce all of this. Plus you have the cooked up crises, the ozone layers melting, and all that stuff that we've been over time after time. The cooked up T-ism. What was our hobo code for tism? An error in the ism? I don't know. But you're allowed to say that anymore in a free country with the First Amendment? I don't know. We're going to be safe and always use the hobo code whenever we think we need to. They cooked that up after 2001. Almost every single major TISM event was simply fake. I'm sure in West Bank and Gaza they did launch missiles, and if you were treated like that, you probably would too. But for the most part, anything, remember there's that train incident where American heroes saved the day and all this bullcrap. It was all cooked up. And we thought, okay, and to create fear, it's something, it's harvesting our energy and actually feeding off our frequencies and taking sustenance from it, like Jupiter Ascending shows to a degree. It's a pretty interesting movie, but it's pretty bad overall. And that actor that plays, I hate that guy. He played Stephen Hawking. He's horrible. But that's not, again, we don't go far enough. It's not just about energy harvesting and loosh. If you want to go to what's probably really close to being accurate and pretty close to the final level is all the tricks, all the manipulations, all the getting in our business, masses and asses and great unwashed, we need you to believe space is completely what we say it is. And we're going to show you hundreds and hundreds of movies and hundreds or thousands of different references and TV shows about what space is. And ultimately, I think this graphic's correct. We are actually, I know it's hard to accept, I think we are creating the actual reality and creating the physical. I know a lot of people roll their eyes at it, and it's just beyond our comprehension that how could that be possible? Man, I'm sitting here at this desk. There's a half-eaten sandwich, and there's a bottle of Coke Zero in front of me and a stack of papers. And how I'm creating this consciousness, real consciousness from real spirited beings are creating the physical? I can't accept that, Matt. How? I know it's almost impossible to fathom. We have major limitations in this avatar. We are in the avatar. We are in the body. Whatever we truly are is dumbed down here. It's probably meant to be dumbed down. There's governors on what we can only comprehend between our bookends. It might not be that hard to see in a different state or upon our death or the day of our life. Or, again, a dream. Somebody could talk to you in a dream and say, this is a dream. There's nothing real here. You wouldn't believe it, right? If you were in the dream. And then same thing applies in the dream. Someone could say, you're in this fake environment, but you're creating it yourself. When we're in a dream, we believe it's real, and we admit that somehow our parts of our consciousness creates the dream environment. Oh, that's just completely normal. We live with that every day. But it's so out of the question that the next level up seems like the next level up. Maybe it's a level down, but the next level up, the waking world, oh, that's just real physical things we have no control over. Maybe it's exactly like a dream. Logically, it would be just like a dream. And if you study the minions and how they operate and do the Sherlock Holmes on what they're doing and why they're doing it, there's almost no other explanation. Or let's switch gears and just look at examples. There's still probably, 25% going, man, I don't know, no way, right? Let's look at examples. Basic, simple examples all the way up to like sci-fi, crazy out there stuff. That's just, could be a sci-fi novel and all the examples in between. But before the examples, what is the one thing, if we agree on one thing in this truth community, when we come into a certain level of understanding, no matter what level we're on, where do we first agree? That there's this group over here standing off to the side, and they play a trick. They lie. They manipulate. They present something that's not the case. And the one area, or the first area, where we all agree is, for some reason, it presents endless lies, tricks, and manipulation. All day long, it's like a convenience store that never closes and never will close till the end of time. 24/7, 365, all holidays fully open. Trick, lie, deception, manipulation. Trick, lie, deception, manipulation. Through the smartphone, through the news presentation, through what it says history is. We agree. It's endless. It's so pervasive getting in our business. Why? What is the point of all of this? And we've also noticed how it's not, quote, of regular human beings. Nobody could pull all of this off with a lie every single time, with a false presentation every single time. It's beyond, quote, end quote, human understanding. So you go back to the root of it. What's the point of this? And for somebody that's new to truth, how many tricks have there been? 10, 20? No, millions. And everything important in life is a trick, is a false presentation. Everything. So what's the point of all this? Money and power? I mean, come on. Is there a grade below kindergarten, nursery school? It's for money and power. And then the next level up, it's like it's like a sixth grade explanation. Oh, loose. It's just about loose energy. We never go far enough, so let's just go close to the end. No, it's because we create the reality itself. And if it wouldn't even exist. There'd be nothing for them to even live in if we turned it off. They for their own survival, they probably got brazen. At first, it was just about make sure these bastards keep creating the reality in the snow globe. If they realize they create the snow globe and they shut it off, we'll have no place to live. It ain't going to affect us, but they're kind of a doomed creature to this place. We have no place to live. And then we're pretty good at manipulating these bastards. So let's get them to do this for us. Let's get them to do that for us. Let's get them to do all sorts of things. They're probably completely overstepping as they are now. Get the poor bastards to create a disease environment throughout the whole realm. Get real people to create a never-ending disease environment. And it's exactly what they're doing now. Matt, does that mean initially there is no germ and there is no cases and people are creating it and manifesting it and bringing it into reality? Yeah, it's absolutely a possibility. And initially there may have been nothing. But if there is something today or anything to point at, or when anybody's tested, if anything is real about the test or whatever marker it's looking for or whatever is making people sick, and we know enough cases now, there's people getting sick for whatever reason. There's a variety of different reasons. But in terms of being consistent with this presentation, it may not have, there might have been no substance to it. It might not have been real in the beginning. And now so many hundreds of millions of real people have manifested it that they have actually created it. This is likely, in my opinion. And I'm not just talking about psychosomatic or hypochondriac or people see it on the news all day, so then they feel a little bit bad. They think they have it. Oh, one of my relatives was a gigantic hypochondriac and everything. She had everything all the time. And, we all know people like this. I'm talking about it actually bringing it into reality, creating it where it did not exist. Okay, this is, in my opinion, how the entire reality works. I'm thrilled to go back to this example. It's one of my favorite examples of all time, but it's absolutely appropriate right here. It's Ray Kurzweil, the ultimate creep of creeps. What was that show of shows? What was that? The show of shows. He's the creep of creeps. Okay, guys, I'll make a 20-minute presentation and into a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And because you've heard me talk about Ray Kurzweil before. But he's supposed to be this head futurist at Google, whatever that is, head futurist. He's supposed to be able, in so many years, to be able to put a chip into people's brains so they can completely interface with the internet directly or whatever, downloading of consciousness, become the lawnmower man, whatever. Now, the point of me reminding you about the Ray Kurzweil creep is I watched his lectures, and I watched many of them over a certain time period. I guess it was about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. He had this road show. He went all over the place. Oh, Ray Kurzweil speaking in Cambridge or wherever. I don't know. Ray Kurzweil speaking at the Kansas State Fair. Ray Kurzweil speaking in George Michael's bathroom, wherever. He went all over, and I listened to him, and I said, he's saying the same things over and over again in a canned way. He doesn't even know much about what he's talking about. He's answering the questions in the same canned way. He doesn't know much about putting a chip into the brain. And it kind of dawned on me, and I sensed it when I first presented it about maybe 2 years ago. I said, he doesn't have any of this ready to go. He needs real consciousness in the audience to believe in it. It's almost like it was, to me, back then, it was like a barrier. He needs real consciousness in the audience to believe that Google and science is very, very close to a brain chip and Johnny Depp's transcendence, and people to buy into it in real consciousness to believe it. And somehow, I don't really understand it, somehow he needs that for it to go forward. But it's almost now like he needs enough real consciousness to believe in it for them to manifest it. All right, this is the purpose of this Ray Kurzweil roadshow. Now, this is very similar to what H.G. Wells's role was, in my opinion. I'm not going to do the accent and the ship interview, although I would like to. H.G. Wells writes all these books. Oh, isn't it incredible, Matt, how he predicted the toaster 20 years before it came, and predicted satellites, and predicted space travel, and predicted all this Stephen Hawking stuff, and he predicted even technology we have in our homes like cell phone. How would he know? He was a genius. No. He was. They have a 100-year plan, probably have a 1,000-year plan. It's all laid out, and they're going to use the puppet, the minion puppet H.G. Wells, who was probably a good writer. But they said, hey, make sure you have these things in there, the cell phone. Make sure you include that, or whatever else he, quote, predicted, or whatever Isaac Asimov predicted about what's coming in the future. It's amazing how they all got it right. Well, people start reading about the future. If an NPC picks it up and reads it, oh, nothing comes out of it. It's just sparkless. But if a real spirited individual picks up and reads it, and they believe this stuff's coming in the future, oh yeah, the Jetsons, meet the Jets. That's not the Flintstones, the Jetsons, whatever. It's all coming in the future. Everything on TV for how long has been what's coming in the future. They get people to believe it, and then actually, to a degree, manifest it, bring it in to real life. That's the purpose of Elon Musk, no doubt about it. That's the purpose of H.G. Wells. That's the purpose of creeps like Kurzweil. That's the purpose of Geordie Rose and his snow cone machine. Whatever a quantum computer is it's probably just a really souped up regular computer with a few things here and there. He does his road show wanting real consciousness to believe it has all these mystical powers. And potentially, as the people in the audience who are real believe it, it basically or potentially or probably manifests it into reality. How much time they need to do that? Just pop up the next day? Probably not, because they seem to have to work very, very hard at this. Look how hard they worked into people believing what space is. Now, we'll talk about that. They get something out of that big time. big time, and we'll go super sci-fi and weigh out weird ass explanations as to that. Actually, quick note before we talk about why their presentation of space and what space travel is supposed to be and what's up there and what it's supposed to be is endless. It's presented the same way over and over again, tens of thousands of times in movies, TV shows, books, comic books, going back through H.G. Wells. It's just endless. I'm going to get into that, but just remember, or at least keep this in the back of your mind as you watch all presentations from authority, from governors taking a podium as to what's going on now, or the news, and its constant application of what does it want me to believe? If I have these powers as a creative, real, spirited individual, what does this want me to do? What does it want me to believe? And what does it want me to manifest? You could apply this all day long and actually using it, again, a little bit more insight beyond it wants me in fear and it wants to vampirically drink the energy that flows out of a real spirited being in a constant state of fear, other than the fact that it wants to vampirically drink that for sustenance. What does it want me to create if I do actually have these powers? And if you look at the whole presentation of news media, for example, in that light, you'll see it in a little bit different way. You'll see more quickly and easily the purpose of how we're being misled all the time. So let's talk a bit about the manipulation of space, what space is supposed to be, space travel, why the manipulation of what they want the masses to believe is endless. I reached out to both Elon Musk and the Vintage Space Chick and asked them to join me in this segment. I mean, who would be better to have in this segment than the Vintage Space Chick or Elon Musk? I got no reply from either of them, but there is probably like a 1 in 5 chance if I just look out my window now, pull the curtain back and look out the window, the Vintage Space Chick will be standing in my driveway with a boombox raised over her head. Peter Gabriel, Your Eyes, reenacting the scene from John Cusack and Say Anything. This happens quite often. If she's out there now, I'll invite her in. For anybody who doesn't know that old gag, Vintage Space is some obnoxious little girl on a YouTube channel called Vintage Space that just tries to endlessly prop up what NASA says is going on in space, prop up what the Apollo missions were all about, prop up the Aquanet Society on the ISS. So I guess, fortunately, she's not going to be part of this segment. Okay, so if there's one thing in this community we are absolutely sure about, well, we're sure about a lot of things at this point, but just the absolute base level where we all agree 100% that no matter what level you're on, in truth, nobody climbed into the tuna fish can, charged up toasters and flux capacitors, and shot themselves off and landed on the moon. I mean, I just had a little spat back and forth with a family member recently, and because of Matt's a conspiracy theory, she says, you probably still believe that the moon landing didn't take place. I went, what? You do? How many years need to go by? It's been 50. What if 150 years go by and nothing? So, God, whatever. I don't want to go back there. I'm sorry. But nobody goes anywhere. Nobody goes anywhere. Elon Musk's SpaceX. If you have to embed the word sex into a serious endeavor like your space travel, you have to embed the word sex into your rocket ship. It ain't real. The Aquanet Society, like the Pink Ladies, is not on this thing flying around up there. Everything flies around at 17,000 miles an hour. Nobody talked to President Nixon from the surface of the moon. We know nobody goes nowhere. So the really fun thing to ponder is, why do they work, and have they worked so hard to get people to believe that space is a certain thing? Think about it. All right. Now the guy on the street would say, well, what do you mean? They're just showing you what it really is. And we just don't quite have the technology to do what Captain Kirk did, but Apollo showed us you can go out there. We're just not quite there yet. Don Pettit said they threw all the information away. That makes sense, and they lost all the data. I mean, I guess the guy on the street would say, well, yeah, they're not trying to convince us of anything, but we know they are. Nobody goes anywhere. So why the endless books, comic books, movies, TV shows? And they're not all in on it. Somebody that wants to make the next Netflix series. What was the woman that played $1 Million Baby She was the one of the Karate Kids, the female version of the Karate Kid, $1 Million Baby. Skank, Hillary Skank, just played in a really. It was the space program, but the emotional and tender side of the space program. Person that created that isn't in on it. They're not getting served by Jared's tea and silver set in the back room because they say, "Oh, this space sells, space works." But originally, whoever set all this in motion, why do they work so hard to get us? It's not about money, guys, or about entertainment. Although entertainment is a monster distraction. There's a reason why the first episode of Star Trek, the very first, Captain Kirk and Spock, going back to, was it the late 60s? Kirk, William Shatner wasn't even in the first episode of the first Star Trek. There was another captain, and it was about, I forget the details, but it was about manifesting reality through the mind, or aliens had figured out how to manifest reality through the mind. And there's a reason that was the first episode of Star Trek. At the base level, a lot of the truth community would be right, but I think it's much more than this. But the base level is correct. It's about helplessness, hopelessness, nothingness, learned helplessness. If you're just this little human being, their term, not ours, but you're just nothing, nobody on this planet, hurtling through the middle of nowhere space, everything codes to 666, everything 166,000 miles an hour, blah, 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 and you're in this solar system, middle of nowhere, and you're in this galaxy in the middle of nowhere, and Neil deGrasse Tyson will confuse you as to, well, you're off the Orion belt arm, or you're in the Sagittarius arm, and all that's been confused and possibly Mandela affected or whatever, and you're just still in the middle of nowhere, and you're just nothing. The concept, or what flows into the subconscious mind from people listening to this, is you're just nothing, man. You're nobody. You're in the middle of nowhere, can't get anywhere, can't go anywhere, because it's like 80 billion light years away. And to make things worse, they'll tell you, oh, and at the center of the galaxy is some gigantic black hole called Sagittarius. At the center of the galaxy is Vanessa VA's singularity. I'm just, don't laugh. The presentation of singularity black hole at the middle of the galaxy, and recent news articles saying we're actually closer to the singularity black hole than this is all, do I think there's really a snow cone machine black hole in the middle of some galaxy? No, it's probably all code, but the whole thing is learned helplessness on individuals. And people would say, and they would be correct, this separates you from God. Or if you're just nothing, well, you're not really in touch with you being close to the divine, whatever your interpretation of that is, or whatever your religion is. You're just some nobody hurtling through the middle of nothingness. Well, that's pretty darn depressing, even though you can get excited about it as a fanboy, an Elon Musk fanboy or a NASA fanboy, or you go and dress up for the Star Trek conventions. That might excite your ego and your frontal lobes, and you go into the Star Trek convention dressed as Spock and meet some girl dressed as Uhura, and you go in the back room with her, and that's real exciting, the frontal lobes and ego. But what's the message to the subconscious or unconscious, or parts of you where you don't even realize, or people that they don't even realize, that you're just in the middle of nowhere and you're just nothing? And that is a big part of it too, but I think that's just entry level. But let's not forget the purpose of this presentation. It's that a Neo, like the Matrix, a Neo like you, is that better than saying human being? I hate the term human being. It just reeks of a degrading system term that we should never put on ourselves. A being in a human experience, I like that, but we need a new term. So I'll just, for now in this presentation, I'll say, we Neos are meant to believe space is a certain thing. The purpose of this presentation is we Neos actually create the reality itself. They get inside of our heads, get us to believe a certain thing, and we create the reality as Neos that they can't create themselves. They need us to do it for them. It is similar to this Fabian society, forging a reality closer to their own liking. I guess the ancient stained glass, or the famous stained glass, shows them with a forge, but that's the thing, that they can't do it directly. They need the real human the real neos to do it, to create the reality for them. This is why, and explains why they can never do it directly. Now, I don't want to lose anybody here saying, well, he was making sense, but now this is so far out there, so gone, so bizarre that everything he said must have no merit and just turn it off. I realize this is complete out there, what I'm about to present, complete sci-fi stuff. It's just an exercise in thinking big, all right? It's just an exercise in thinking big, but let's go through it. All right. Is it possible? I realize it's out there, and I'm not going to put all my chips here, guys, okay? But is it possible that we've talked about the minions being doomed creatures, and they're kind of stuck here where we have a spiritual bridge out of here on the day of our life, and we've been through all of that. But they are potentially stuck here, these minions, rooted to this plane of existence, and they want a way out. Maybe real consciousness can build a way out by actually creating and manifesting space. Mars was just a light. Maybe it is becoming a real planet, transforming potentially into a real thing of red mud that Matt Damon can land on. Because what if millions and billions of real consciousness believe it's the red planet? Does it actually start to take shape and come into existence? I've pondered this sort of thing regarding the flat Earth, globe Earth, light beer from Miller, less filling tastes great debate that's been going on now hardcore for 10 years, and but I've thought about it more like a game they play. Maybe, guys, I believe there's so much going on here. It's not as simple as choosing a shape, and, it's fluid reality, and I don't, obviously that's not one or the other. In this world, whenever there are two choices to something that magnificent, it's not that simple, of course. But I thought, well, maybe the Earth really was flat, because that is what they got real consciousness to believe, 500 years ago. So whatever real consciousness believes is what the evidence or the reality shows real consciousness. Maybe it's like a Duke and Duke $1 bet. Randolph, yes, Mortimer, I believe by the year, not 2000, be like, I believe by the year 1900, we can get so much real consciousness to believe that this is a ball planet spinning through space that it actually will start to take those characteristics on. And there will be actually evidence and scientific evidence proving it, because real consciousness we will just, as a Duke and Duke $1 bet, will just transform everyone's consciousness into believing this is now a ball spinning through space. And potentially what the flat earthers have latched on to are all the residuals that existed when the Earth was something else. And for anybody saying, well, Matt, you think it's a ball? That you're too physical, okay? This is some sort of a matrix here manipulated by consciousness. Okay, I'm never going to latch onto the physical. Okay, one shape or the other. I think that's absurd. But it's like the end of reality in the movie The 13th Floor. We're going to get consciousness in 1600 and 1500 to believe it's flat, and then it will show all the characteristics of being flat. But then as a Duke and Duke $1 bet, we're going to get real consciousness and to believe it's round, and to believe that there's this construct called space. And it will start to actually show, it will manifest into reality itself if enough people believe in it. The math will start to line up, and the certain evidence will start to line up. Well, Matt, there's no evidence at all. It's a ball. I'm not getting into that. There's tremendous evidence on both sides. But who knows how long the Duke and Duke $1 bet goes on for? So in terms of getting, for Randolph to win the $1 bet, we need certain things to happen. So we're going to present space and space travel and rocket ships in a certain way for 100 years. And then all the characteristics of the plane of existence lining up with a ball will be Death Star complete. I don't know, but I'm not going to take anything off the table like this. If real people like you and me create reality, then we're also creating the shape of the plane of existence in which we live. Maybe those that started investigating flat Earth per the old residuals of what existed years and years ago, it doesn't seem like they're making more strides. There's more real creative consciousness in the truth community, and it's breaking down their presentation of space. Maybe the flat earthers are just, it's like causing a rift or a ripple into the matrix. That's why the SpaceX presentation is just never good enough. That's why it's just kind of comical. And maybe in their Chernobyl control tower rooms, they're going, why can't we get this? It was so believable when we did this with Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo. And everybody believed in John Glenn. Godspeed, by the way. Everybody believed in that fraud. But now it's like a joke, a comedy show. Maybe there's a lot of reasons, guys, why it's presented as a joke and a comedy show today. There's nothing more pathetic than those millennials trying to commentate during a SpaceX mission. For those in the truth community that have seen that, know exactly what I'm talking about. There's nothing more cringeworthy, pathetic, and comical than those millennial creatures trying to commentate a SpaceX launch. Oh, we have 17,000 Iridium satellites just launched in a second and a half. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. So maybe in the Chernobyl control Illuminati tower, they're going, why can't we get this right? It keeps coming off looking like a joke, like killer clowns from outer space. We just can't get, but then maybe it is the flat earthers constantly punching a hole into that version of the Matrix. I don't know, but all this shit is on the table. You know, why their presentations are so bad anymore. You know, again, guys, this is so far out there. I don't even know where to take this, but you know, we'll just keep it in the back of our mind. We know at this point the basics. We do, collectively at least, and individually as well, create the physical environment and reality. That's why their manipulations and their tricks and their lies and their tactics are so over the top to get us to forge the Fabian Society, forge the reality in the sick, perverted way that they want. I understand and acknowledge there's a lot of problems with this. For example, there's some problems with the whole theory, but the economic collapse news that they hit the truth community with hardcore from, oh gosh, probably as early as 2010, maybe even before, through 2014, was just every other video the truth community was watching about economic collapse, over and over and over again. And we can see now, based on what's happening with the C thing, that they have complete digital control over all world economies, can inject money wherever they want, can make sure no big businesses fail. It's all propped up artificially. It's all done on supercomputers. And somebody would rightly say, well, why were they mad? If your theory is right about real humans creating reality and reflecting back the physical environment, reflecting, let me just back up for a second. The original thing that I came up with probably about 2 years ago was I said, it seems like the screen or the reality itself, to manipulate a human being to separate from itself. Ultimately, it wants us to cut spiritual ties with ourselves. That's the purpose of the last video. It floats a blurry image on the screen, and it's just not good enough. It can't bring it into reality. This is my original theory that relates very closely to this graphic that Wayne put together. But then the minions, all its minions, run around to make that blurry image clear. Excuse me. The minions run around and say, the blurry image is put out of, let's just say, a certain type of lifestyle. All right? We're not prejudiced towards those certain types of lifestyles, whether it be the trans or anything. People should be allowed to do whatever they want. But it's floated as the greatest thing of all time. 5 or 6 years ago, it's floated as the most wonderful thing anybody could ever do is this lifestyle. Really? And so, but then nobody initially believes it. But then it's on every magazine cover. The minions then go to work making a blurry image clear, making a blurry image 4K, making wet cement hard. That's the role of the minions, to say, somebody over here really looks up to Ellen, and Ellen will tell you how this certain lifestyle is the greatest thing of all time, well eclipsing any traditional family that you saw in Leave It to Beaver, much, much better than anything like that. And so then enough people, minions run around, they get enough real people to believe it, the image starts to gain clarity. And I know this is my theory about 2 years ago, and this is generally how the screen works and the screen does business. We have to harden the cement and then put it back into society permanently. And once real consciousness hardens the cement and puts it back into society permanently, then it's permanently part of society. Okay, back to the problem. Why did they float to the truth community and want the real neos to believe an economic collapse is coming if it wasn't coming? Because it would have come now via, obviously, the C thing would have set off a chain of events where one thing failing would have led to another thing failing. Why did they want does the whole theory break down? Why do they want real creative consciousness to believe economic collapse? And we all believed it was inevitable, but not only did it never happen, what's happening now shows how easily they can prop it up and how they don't want it, or they would have already used it, what's going on now, to create the real economic collapse we were so worried about. And I don't have the answers to this, guys. I'm admitting, anybody that comes and says this theory, and never presents the other side, the problems with the theory, they're not legitimate. There are problems with this theory. If somebody might say, screaming at their computer, Matt, if you're so arrogant that you're the neos, you're the real creators, the truth community or real spirited beings are just so much more powerful than everybody else and NPCs in terms of reality creation. Well, explain it, Matt. Why did they work you guys over for years and years? So you all believed there would be an economic collapse and you all did a degree of prepping and then nothing happened. Wouldn't you have manifested that, Matt? Because y'all believed it and we all did. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think the basics of what's being presented here are accurate. Do I know? It's a very sophisticated adversary. All right, we've been used, played, and manipulated more than anybody in this truth community. I don't know the answer to this. One answer is potential discrediting, but was it just about that? Discrediting? I mean, I was very discredited with a lot of people, as were many of you, saying, screaming at people in my family 4 years ago to buy gold. It's all coming down. And if the economy was real, if it was as they told us it was in college, or so, it would have all come down because these derivatives and these junk instruments and banks are all tied together. It would have come down, but it's not real. They simply inserted an illusion, a supercomputer that manages cash injections all over the world to keep everything going. And it's, again, that's not human. No regular human being sitting down at a think tank could work that out. That's just not possible. The world economic system is too complicated. It would be being flushed right now. The economic pain with small business has been bad, but it's been relatively minor. I mean, it's been extremely minor considering what's happening now. If you really followed the economic collapse stuff, guys, and got into what collateralized debt obligations were and how one bank's junk is all tied into another bank's junk and all the sophistication of world economies, you would have thought, we would have thought 3 or 4 years ago in the middle of all our economic collapse research, we would have thought if they just stall the economy out even for 2 months, it will domino down. And literally, we would have predicted we would be at the point now, based on all these shutdowns. I would have predicted that basically the humongous with a hockey mask would be coming down my driveway, either threatening me for canned goods or stealing my firewood. At this point, this is where those who followed the economic collapse thought we would be. So obviously, it's just inhuman measures how they've been able to keep everything together. But the point here is, why did they get real? If you're so real and you're the neos, Matt, but why did they float to you economic collapse and it never happened? And again, the first grade level is discrediting. I was screaming at all my family members, it's going to come, economic collapse, get out of the market, buy gold. Of course, it never happened. I'm discredited. Was it just about that? Maybe. I mean, it would be easy enough to say these truthers are going to be on to certain things in the year 2020 of clear vision. They're going to be on to how reality really works. They're going to be on to what our role is here in this reality. So potentially it is a 10-year discrediting of get them to talk about economic collapse, get them to talk about this that'll never happen, get them to talk about that'll never happen to their family and friends and over the Thanksgiving holiday years and years ago. And many people, that my big thing was, oh, buy gold, and we don't have much time left before this whole thing gets flushed. Stock market's going to go to zero, blah blah blah. And again, if guys, and I'm not just trying to make myself feel better in saying this, if the economies were real and things were real like they described them to be in these finance classes I took at Penn State, you can't run 22, 23, 24, whatever it is, trillion. I don't look anymore at the debt clock. You can't run 24 trillion of debt. And there's nobody to continue to buy the debt instruments. If anything were real, it would have all come down to nothing. We just didn't realize how fake it was and how virtual it was. So I was tremendously discredited through that, and maybe that's what it was all about. I don't know. We'll keep pondering that. But because I've strayed a little bit here, guys, remember one of the main points is I'm telling you, I know Ray Kurzweil was making these same canned presentations. He didn't know anything. He's supposed to be the lead guy on putting a chip in somebody. He knew next to nothing. He was saying the same canned replies. It hit me, and I am sure about this, that he needs the audience to believe in this first. Now, if that's accurate, that is incredible evidence that this chart and how reality works, and the consciousness creates the physical, and they hijack our consciousness to create the physical or the reality that they want. If you believe what I'm saying, or my interpretation of Ray Kurzweil was giving the same canned Seabiscuit speech, Seabiscuit tour in the back of the caboose. Everywhere he went, he said the same things in the same way, answered the questions in the same manner. Didn't really seem like an expert. If he needed that audience to believe in it first, then that almost by itself, you could say, then it almost proves reality has to work this way. Or you might like the H.G. Wells better. If they're going to fraudulently present what space is and all this stuff, well, why did they need H.G. Wells to plant the seed as to what space is going to be, or Asimov and these other sci-fi writers? Why do they need that? I don't know, guys. I guess that's enough to chew on for a while. Anyway, thanks for listening.